You know the feeling. You're scrolling, not really paying attention, and then you see it. That game, the one you played every single day when you were 10, so you download it again. 4 minutes later, you delete it, because in those 4 minutes, you watched 3 ads and played about 90 seconds of actual game. And it's not just that one. It's the whole shelf, every game from that era, the ones literally everyone had, all quietly turned into the same thing, an ad machine with a game attached. So how did that happen? And why these games and not the ones sitting right next to them? Let's get into it. First, we need to set the scene because the App Store used to work completely differently. In the early 2000s, you paid for games. Not a lot, usually 99 cents, but you paid. Angry Birds was a paid app, Fruit Ninja was a paid app, Doodle Jump was a paid app. You handed over $1 and you got the whole game with no ads and free updates forever. But that fell apart fast because of a race to the bottom on price. Developers kept undercutting each other and running constant sales to climb the charts, so 99 cents became the ceiling instead of the floor. And players got trained to just wait for everything to be free. And once free-to-play proved it made more money, the paid market got wiped out. By 2013, around 92% of iOS revenue was already coming from free games with in-app purchases. Now here's the part that actually explains this whole video, because free-to-play isn't one model, it's two, and the game you were playing decided which one you got stuck with. The first path is the in-app purchase path, which is the Clash of Clans and Candy Crush path. These games are built so a small number of players can spend a genuinely large amount of money, and when I say small, I mean small. The usual benchmark for how many daily players actually buy anything is around 2 to 5%. But those few people can spend hundreds or thousands. And that carries everyone else for free. And this is exactly why Clash of Clans has basically never shoved a full screen ad in your face. It doesn't need your attention. It needs your builder to be busy, so you consider buying gems. Your time in that game is worth more to Supercell than an ad impression ever would be. The second path is the advertising path, and that's where all your childhood games ended up for one simple reason, which is that they had nothing to sell you. Like, what are you supposed to spend $100 on in Fruit Ninja? A new blade? What's the whale purchase in Doodle Jump? There isn't one. These were designed as premium products, complete little arcade experiences with a fixed amount of content and no progression economy, and no reason to spend more than the original dollar. So when the market forced them to go free, they had no spending economy to fall back on, and the only lever left was your attention. And you can see this really clearly in the charts from that decade. When App Annie listed the most downloaded mobile games of the 2010s, number 1 was Subway Surfers, and the list also had Temple Run, My Talking Tom, Pooh, Hill Climb Racing, Minion Rush, Fruit Ninja, and 8-Ball Pool on it. Absolutely massive games. But when you look at consumer spending for the same decade, almost none of them show up, and the top spot goes to Clash of Clans instead. That gap is the whole story. They won on scale and lost on spending, and when that happens, ads are all that's left. And there's a really clean moment where the industry realized how much money was sitting in that scale, and that was Flappy Bird. One developer made in a couple of days, no in-app purchases at all, one small banner ad, and at its peak in early 2014, it was reportedly making around $50,000 a day. Before that, ads were the sad consolation prize if you couldn't build a real IAP economy. After that, it was pretty clear that with enough eyeballs, ads weren't a consolation prize, they were the business. And the entire hyper-casual wave that followed ran on exactly that, with those games making roughly 90% of their revenue from advertising. So let's go through what actually happened to the specific games because some of these are rough. Fruit Ninja is probably the clearest example of the whole pipeline. It launched as a paid game, you bought it, and you owned it. Then a free version showed up alongside it, and eventually the paid one got renamed Fruit Ninja Classic, while the free one just became Fruit Ninja. And the version everyone actually downloads now is fully free to play with ads, and the reviews are brutal, with people saying you get a pop-up after every single round, so basically an ad every 60 seconds. And on top of that, Halfbrick launched a subscription called Halfbrick Plus, a few dollars a month, and that's how you get the ad-free experience back. So the thing you bought once for $1 in 2010 is now a recurring fee. And a lot of those reviews aren't even from people mad that ads exist. They're from people who already paid years ago and are now being asked to subscribe to something they already own. To be fair, Halfbrick has been pretty open about free-to-play never really being their thing, but their solution to that was to run a more aggressive free-to-play game and charge a subscription to escape it. Then there's Hill Climb Racing, which I think people forget was enormous. It hit 1 billion downloads by 2018 and was only the second Finnish mobile game to do that after Angry Birds. And the recent reviews are exactly what you'd expect. There's one on the sequel where someone says they've had it on multiple phones for over a decade and it's now virtually unplayable. And their line is basically 30 seconds of gameplay for 3 minutes of ads. And on the first game, there's a review pointing out there are now mandatory ad breaks every couple of runs when the game originally had none at all. And that's the detail that stings, because it isn't a new game that launched this way. It's the same game slowly filled in with advertising over 10 years. And that brings me to Words with Friends, which is probably the most widespread one just because of who played it. This wasn't a kid's game. This is the game your mom and your grandparents played, and it was reportedly the most popular mobile game in the entire US as of 2017. And the complaint on it is incredibly consistent, which is that you get an ad after every single move. Not every game, every move. In a turn-based word game where a turn takes 8 seconds, that ratio is genuinely absurd. There are reviews saying they'd be fine with a banner or even an ad every 5 turns, and the way you remove them is a recurring pass rather than a one-time purchase. So again, you're renting the absence of advertising. Now, Talking Tom is a different situation, and honestly, a worse one, because the audience was very obviously small children, and the ad monetization got built into the game's visual language. There was research in 2018 on kids' apps that flagged what they called camouflaged ads, meaning ads designed to look like game content. And the example they used from My Talking Tom was a present dropping down from the ceiling that prompts you to watch videos when you tap it. So the reward mechanic and the ad mechanic look identical, and a 5-year-old genuinely cannot tell the difference. And separately, in 2015, the UK's advertising regulator ruled that a sexually explicit ad had been served to children inside that game. And Outfit 7's response was basically that they had a strict policy and couldn't even identify which network served it, which is the most revealing part of all of this, because it shows that once you plug an ad network into your game, you've handed over control of what your players see. And then there's Angry Birds, which is the most famous case and also the most misunderstood. Rovio delisted the original back in 2019, then in 2022, brought it back as Rovio Classics, Angry Birds for $1 with no ads and no purchases. Basically the version everyone wanted. And then in February 2023, barely a year later, they pulled it from Google Play and renamed it on iOS. And the reason they gave was the game's impact on their wider games portfolio, while pointing people toward Angry Birds 2 instead. Everyone read that as Rovio killing the good paid version, because it competed with the free-to-play ones. But Rovio pushed back a few weeks later and said the real problem was search results, that the dollar version was dominating searches, so people saw a paid game, decided not to buy, and downloaded nothing at all. I don't know which reading is accurate, and Rovio's version is a claim, not a proven thing, but both land in the same uncomfortable place, because either way a clean paid Angry Birds could not coexist with the free-to-play one in 2023. There's one more piece to this that gets left out, and it's 2021. In April of that year, Apple rolled out App Tracking Transparency, that prompt asking whether an app can track you across other apps, and the overwhelming majority of people said no. And since targeting is what makes an impression valuable, the value of each ad dropped, so developers relying on ad revenue suddenly had the same number of players generating less money per ad. And if ads are your whole business, there's only one response, which is to show more ads. Hyper-casual revenue as a category actually fell around 10% in 2022. And a lot of the industry advice at the time was literally about raising ad frequency and caps and adding banners on top of interstitials. So that's your answer for why these games got noticeably worse specifically around 2021 and 2022. It wasn't just greed slowly getting worse, there was an actual event that made every existing ad worth less. And one detail I find funny in a dark way is what the ads inside these games actually are, because a huge portion of them are ads for other mobile games. Specifically that whole category with the fake gameplay ads, the pin-pulling puzzles, and the wrong number math battles that never resemble what you download. So the end state is that Fruit Ninja and Hill Climb Racing became the delivery mechanism for games that are lying about what they are. So does any of it even work? There was a player survey last year where 84% said they'd uninstalled a game over disruptive ads, and a Deloitte survey where 52% said they'd quit over multiple disruptive ad features. So this approach is measurably burning through players. But here's the flip side, and I think it's the most important part of this whole video. When you ask about rewarded ads, the ones you choose to watch to get something, the sentiment completely flips, with something like 87% of players viewing them positively. Which tells you the problem was never advertising, it's consent. Nobody minds trading 30 seconds for a revive, because that's a deal you agreed to. What people hate is the ad that shows up because you finished a level and the game decided it was owed something. And that's really the difference between the games that pulled this off and the ones that didn't. So when I look at all of this, I don't think there was a moment where developers sat in a room and decided to ruin their games. The price of a mobile game got driven to zero. The studios that had built complete little arcade games with nothing to upsell had exactly one lever available, and then a privacy change forced them to pull it a lot harder. That's not a defense because some of these are objectively unplayable now, but it was more structural than villainous. And the genuinely sad part isn't even the ads, it's that the fix now costs more than the original game ever did. The ad-free version of Fruit Ninja used to be $1, forever. Now it's a subscription. We didn't just lose these games, we lost the whole idea that you could buy a small game and simply own it. But let me know down in the comments which of these you missed the most, and if there are any you think somehow avoided all of this and are still good today. But that is also it for this video. I really hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll catch you all in the next one.